Imagine walking into a family party, expecting music, laughter, and joy, but finding your little girl sitting on a chair, her head completely shaved, and your own sister standing there, holding the clippers, laughing and calling it a joke. That laugh changed everything. It began like any other summer Saturday. Balloons, the smell of barbecue, kids running in circles. I dressed my daughter in her favorite blue dress. She spun around, giggling, her curls bouncing with every step. I smiled because her happiness was my whole world. Inside, the living room was loud, messy, full of family chatter. My sister was in the corner, telling a story that made everyone laugh. I believed, foolishly, that in a house full of family nothing bad could happen to my little girl. I was wrong. When I went to look for her, my world tilted. There she was on a wooden chair in the hallway, knees pulled to her chest, dress wrinkled, head bare. Her hair was gone. Tears clung to her eyelashes. Behind her, my sister stood with clippers in her hand, laughing like she had told the best joke of her life. "It's just a joke," she said. "A joke." My daughter ran into my arms, shaking and crying. At that moment something inside me broke. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I held her so tight I could feel every sob. Everyone waited for me to explode. But I didn't. I needed to be careful. This would not end with a shout and empty apologies. This was about dignity, about trust. I sat on the back steps while the party noise muffled behind glass and made a promise to myself. She would pay a price for what she had done. Not in a single moment of rage, but in a deliberate way that showed the cost of turning someone's pain into entertainment. I started gathering. Quietly. I recorded conversations, saved texts, collected photos, and small clips from other times when my sister had crossed lines. It wasn't just the clippers. It was a pattern of cruelty. Piece by piece, I built a timeline of her behavior. I began with my daughter. I documented her nightmares, the way she flinched at the sound of scissors, the nights she woke up calling for her hair. I took her to a pediatrician who specializes in trauma. I kept a journal of every small change. I used those notes to show what had actually happened and what it had done to her. Then I asked family members quietly, "Did you see what she did? Did you think it was funny?" Some shifted and lowered their eyes. A few who had laughed avoided me. Doubt spread. The first cracks appeared. When private doubts were ignored, I stepped wider. I spoke to friends and colleagues who had been on the receiving end of her jokes. I found people who had been humiliated in small ways that, when strung together, formed a pattern. I compiled messages, dates, and names. I did not post it online. I did not shout from the rooftops. I used evidence and careful language. I sent a measured email to her workplace, not to destroy, but to ask questions that needed answering. I wrote to family members she relied on and asked them to consider what it meant to support someone who treated other people as props. The responses were small at first. Doors that used to open for her began to close. Invitations disappeared. People who once laughed with her now hesitated. Her world narrowed slowly. Charm only carries you so far when people begin to question your temperament and your choices. Friends stopped calling. Colleagues responded with caution. She called me one night and wrote, "Who are you to do this to me?" I answered, "Think about the little girl whose hair you shaved." For the first time, she sounded afraid. We met in a park under an oak tree. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her. I wanted to say everything, to let years of resentment spill out, but I kept my voice steady. I asked, "Did you think to ask her? Did you think what it would do to her trust?" She said she had thought it would be funny for a video. She said she didn't think my daughter would be hurt like this. She cried. She begged for forgiveness. She promised change. Promises are easy on a park bench. I wanted more than words. I told her, calmly, what had changed. The doors that closed, the invitations that never came, the way people now measured her before they let her into their lives. I told her about the pediatrician notes, the nights my daughter woke up frightened. I told her about the quiet apologies whispered by relatives who had laughed that day. She realized then that her joke had become her punishment. She asked what she could do. I set conditions that were simple and cold. Apologies were not enough. There had to be accountability. She would seek therapy. She would volunteer working with children where she could learn responsibility. She would reach out to those she had hurt and listen. She would accept that some consequences could not be rushed away. Months passed. My daughter's hair grew back, and so did her smile, though for a while it had a carefulness to it that I hated. My sister did the hard work unevenly, sometimes sincere, sometimes defensive. She showed up at a children's center. She sat in therapy. She made awkward apologies and listened when people spoke. Small things shifted. Some doors reopened. Some stayed closed. People often ask if I regret the way I handled it. They ask whether revenge changed me, whether it made me cruel. Revenge is a heavy word. What I did was deliberate. I forced accountability into spaces where cruelty had been dismissed as a prank. I turned private laughter into public responsibility. I do not take pleasure in watching someone suffer. I take responsibility in protecting my child. She shaved my daughter's head and called it a joke. I removed the comforts she had taken for granted and let her face the cost of her choice. When she begged for forgiveness, I listened, and then I said what I needed to say. You called it a joke. I made sure you would never laugh again at someone else's expense. Time will tell if she truly changed. My daughter is healing. We rebuilt trust slowly, one small moment at a time. The lesson remained. Humiliation is not entertainment, and choices like that leave marks that people carry. I wanted her to understand that everything has a consequence, especially when the consequence is someone's dignity. You can forgive. You can try to rebuild. But never mistake a joke for harmlessness when it breaks a child's trust. I did what I had to do to protect my daughter and to teach a painful, necessary lesson. In the end, that is all I could ask for.